Virtually all the concrete of these enormous structures was pulverized into very fine dust. Try this. Get a piece of concrete and drop it a little over 1,000 feet and see if it pulverizes into very fine dust. It won't happen. Much of this dust, along with steel and aluminum, was blown out horizontally from the buildings several hundred feet. Most of the steel beams and columns came down in sections about 30 feet long, conveniently ready to be loaded onto trucks. In any case, when we look at all these features of the collapses, the idea that they could have been caused by the impact of the airplanes plus the resulting fires is ridiculous.
You mean to tell me that the United States government does not own the Federal Reserve System? Because it's my understanding that the Federal Reserve System controls the money of the populace, the general people of the United States. And are you telling me that it's not the government of the United States, the Federal Reserve?
Well, that is the secret of the Federal Reserve, is that it's not federal, and it has no reserves, and it's not a system at all. It's actually a criminal syndicate.
It's a criminal syndicate.
Well,
how can you say that? Tell us about that, Eustace Mullins.
Well, I can say that because north of here, there's a millionaire's retreat called Jekyll Isle, Georgia, which for many years was the private preserve of some of the wealthiest families in the United States. They met there in secret in Thanksgiving of 1910 to draft a money monopoly plan which they intended to force on the people of the United States.
It was there that the central banking bill called the Federal Reserve Act was written. This legislation was written by bankers, not lawmakers. This meeting was so secretive, so concealed from government and public knowledge that the 10 or so figures who attended disguised their names when en route to the island.
And they stipulated it would be called a Federal Reserve System to delude the public. They stipulated that they would own the stock forever. You and I would never be allowed access to this stock. And they set up a money monopoly in violation of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which provided, the Founding Fathers made sure to guarantee the people of the United States they would have their own money. Congress would have control over the money. So then, after they wrote this secret plan, they had to take it before Congress and persuade Congress to turn over this money power to the private bankers. They did it through bribery, through intimidation.
Woodrow Wilson became president, having already agreed to sign the Federal Reserve Act in exchange for campaign support. And 2 days before Christmas, when most of Congress was at home with their families, the Federal Reserve Act was voted in, and Wilson in turn made it law.
The owners of the stock since 1914 are the big rich, the elitists, the Rockefellers, the Harrimans, the Warburgs, the Schiffs.
You know who owns this? The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and less than 15 other criminal families.
Well, the pretext that they put this over on the people is that the President of the United States, who has been chosen and elected by the bankers, then chooses people who will serve as Federal Reserve Board of Governors. And they supposedly control the economic life of the United States. And of course, they're all stooges.
Now, if you take money, and if you're the one that can increase the money, or if you can have inflation or deflation, how does that itself, Eustace Mullins, how can that help or hinder a society, the increase of, and were these depressions that we had in this country, were they planned depressions?
Every depression was artificially engineered by purely mechanical means, by suddenly decreasing the money supply, by telling the banks to foreclose all their loans, and in other words, you bankrupt everybody in one fell swoop. Well, why do they want to bankrupt everybody? So they could take over their property at 1 cent on the dollar.
These gigantic foreclosures, I mean, we're talking about virtually tens of thousands of homes today in 1993 that are being foreclosed against. Is that part of this conspiracy against middle America by the international banking system or the Federal Reserve System?
That's absolutely correct. You see, the great enemy of the bankers and their conspiracy is an educated, well-informed middle class. They don't worry about the poor people because the poor people do not have enough capital or independence to ever mount any resistance. But the middle class can, because the middle class wants to defend its private homes, its little car sitting in the driveway.
I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. I had made a video called Mad as Hell, and he'd seen the video and wanted to meet me and knew I was running for governor of Nevada. So sure, I'd love to meet him. And I met him, and I liked him, and he was a very, very smart man. And we used to talk and share ideas and thoughts. And he's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told him what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event. And out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we'd go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later 9/11 happened. And I remember he was telling me how you're going to see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places. And there's going to be this war on terror, which is no real enemy. And the whole thing is a giant hoax, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no question. He says, there's going to be war on terror. And he's just laughing. There's no... Who are we fighting? I mean, why do you think 9/11 happened and then nothing's happened since then? Do you think that our security is so great here that these people who pulled off 9/11, who were able to, can't knock down another plane? Come on, it's ridiculous. 9/11 was done by people in our own government and our own banking system to perpetuate the fear of the American people into subordinating themselves to anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror. And that's why and that was the first lie. And the next lie was going into Iraq, to get Saddam Hussein out with his weapons of mass destruction. That was the next lie.
Now, specifically, this was a little over 6 years ago.
This was
11 months before 9/11.
Yeah.
And Nick Rockefeller, he's a lawyer. He's become your friend over the previous years, and he's saying to you that there's going to be this big event, and then out of that we're going to have a war on terror, and it's just going to go on and on. Right.
An endless war on terror without any real enemy. That you can never define a winner.
And did he say that it's going to be perfect because you can't define an enemy? It just goes on
and on? Yeah, because you can't define a winner. There's no one to beat, so it goes on and on forever. And they can do whatever they want. They scare the hell out of the American public. Look, this whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. It's very difficult to say it out loud because people are intimidated against saying it. Because if you say it, they want to make you into a nutcase. But the truth has to come out. That's why I'm doing this interview. The fact of the matter happens to be that the whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce.
Does war itself, does it create different classes of individuals from a financial standpoint?
Well, war is enormously profitable because it's so destructive. You see, modern technology and modern industry produces so much that the competition drives the prices down and everybody goes bankrupt. So you have a war and it destroys so much that then everybody gets rich again, replacing all the stuff that was destroyed in the war. That's the story of modern economy.
Now they're creating a depression so they can use all the money they've hoarded to buy up the infrastructure.
And what they do is they hire, as professors of economics at the major universities, they pay them $100,000 a year to prevent them from ever telling their students any of the realities of economic life in America today.
You're fired, you private banker hijackers, you counterfeiters masquerading as a U.S. bank. You are a private group of criminals.